spent probably the last 5 years of my life studying Generation Z. I just finished my dissertation about a year ago, and I found some really interesting things. A lot of what I thought was true I found out, but I also found out some surprises along the way. So why do we talk about generations? One of the biggest reasons is Generation Y has actually graduated. They're now working. They're not in the classroom anymore. So those people that are like, millennials, no, millennials are gone. It's all post-millennials now. Generation Z are now seniors in college, so the oldest one is a senior. And then they are definitely not the same as Generation Y. And it's been pretty amazing, because a lot of times we have this weird perception of a millennial. And if you try to apply that same perception to a post-millennial, you will not be accurate. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, and they're both different than Generation X and the Boomers. And so that's people that are teaching them have a different way of processing it as well. So my whole entire dissertation was based on generational theory, and that is that we are all created by the events and the things that happen to us during our lifetime. The music we listen to, the events that are occurring, all of that, it shapes us. And so that's kind of what all this is based off of. So here's what's really, when you say Generation Z is completely different, we say that all the time, right? Oh, well, my generation is different. My generation is different. Generation Z is actually physically different, because while their brains were developing, they were on technology. And technology has been proven to actually alter the brain. So Carr did a study on primates, and he found that as people used technology, the brain is actually rewiring. So when we say the Generation Z, and if you want a really good book, The Shallows by Carr, really great book, we are talking about they are actually physically different than us. And so it is something to talk about. We'll talk about it a little more. This is my family. What's very interesting about this is we are all from a different generation. My husband is a baby boomer. I am Generation X. My oldest son, he's right on that cusp, so he's like a millennial, and then my youngest son is a Z. You'll see that we're all graduating together. It's very interesting because my son was 18 when he got his bachelor's degree. What's so amazing about that is that we are looking at a generation that are doing things quicker and faster, and they are 14 years old and they're starting companies. They're not waiting. If you would call Generation Y, we call them the me generation, I would call this the now generation. Let's go, let's go, let's go, right? So when you think of Generation Z, just out of curiosity, what do you guys think of? What are some adjectives that you might have for Generation Z? Anybody? What'd you say?
Plugged in.
Plugged in, absolutely. Anything else?
Antisocial.
Antisocial, interesting. I'll have to hit that one in a second. Any others?
Fusion.
Fusion, interesting.
Blended together.
Yeah, they do. Well, convergence, right? Their whole world is convergence. All right. 78% of leaders and teachers are ill-equipped to manage this next generation. 72% of employers say they are having challenges with the various differences. So we definitely have to really think about who these people are. So they were born from 95 to 2010. They will make up a quarter of the United States next year. So they are a big portion of who we are today. There's a whole bunch of names attached to them. I usually call them either post-millennial or Generation Z. So if you want the other ones, there they are, but it's got a ton. And then they're known for being optimistic, confident, diverse, and patient and flexible. So this generation, it's funny because a lot of times people are worried about, oh, this generation. I'm like, no, this generation is actually really exciting. You just have to understand them. And that's what we're going to get into. So, did you know a goldfish attention span is 9 seconds? A post-millennial's attention span is actually 8 seconds. So if you're standing up and you're lecturing like I am right now to a bunch of post-millennials, within 8 seconds their brain starts to go somewhere else. So that's really hard. But here's what's really cool. I'm actually just finished writing a book about this, trying to get it published. A squirrel's attention span is 1 second. Okay? However, if you give them an acorn, it will go up 4 minutes. That's 240% higher. So think about that for a second. If our post-millennials' attention span is only 8 seconds, but we can find an acorn, we could get them to go up 240% higher. So that's our goal, right? Our goal is to get them so they're at least for 30 minutes, we got them, right? If not longer. So what is Gen Z's acorn? What is it that they need or need to be able to process and all that, right? So let's just talk about engagement just for a second, because that's what my whole thing is about, how to engage this generation. So just so you know, it's kind of motivation. What motivates you to sit there and listen to me and be part of what I'm doing? The single biggest problems facing us today is digital immigrant bosses and educators who speak an outdated language and are struggling to teach and reach a population that speaks an entirely new language. That has kind of been the problem, right? The X's and the boomers are just speaking a different language than this new generation. So, we've already said they have short attention spans. They want to learn. And if people are like, oh, they don't want to learn. No, they want to learn. They will spend hours and hours looking at a video on YouTube, right? But they want it to take little time and effort. Their brains are rewarded for what's called task skipping. Do you guys know what task skipping is? That means moving from one thing to another. So their brains are actually physically rewarded every time they move to something else. So that's a problem for educators, right? They aspire for change but have little patience for slow process. So they really want to change the world. They have this great desire for empathy. They want to do more, which is why they're an exciting generation. The problem is if we treat them like we treated former generations, like the millennials, where, oh, they don't really want to do anything. You're right, they won't do anything. But if you treat them like, oh my goodness, they really want to change the world, how can I give them an acorn to make them change the world? They're going to be 100% on board with you and go an extra mile with you. But it's all about how you perceive them and how you treat them. So they are accustomed to commenting, liking, upvoting. So if you aren't finding ways to let them be part of the process, then you really are one step behind. So because they're so used to being part of everything that's happened in their lives, they are a doing generation. They have to be part of the learning process. They cannot just be sitting in a chair and not doing any of it. This generation, especially Gen Z, expects to be more than just a spectator. They believe that they can make a difference at any age. I keep bringing those table. I'm just going to roll this way. All right. So what do you think is the #1 reason for disengagement? This is for my study. Anybody?
Irrelevance.
Okay, that's a good guess.
Lack of involvement, not being able to like or
Just being part of it. Okay, that's a really good one. Here's the #1, and this one is 100% you. Straight lecture. They do not like it. This is some of the things they said. I'm disengaged when the teacher is just talking. Straight up lecture, just talking bores me. Stop talking about assignments in class, it's boring. A teacher just talking puts me off. And this was over and over and over. It was the #1 thing that people said. They don't want just straight lecture. Just talking is disengaging. In one class, the professor just talks and talks and talks. It's very hard to listen. I come from San Diego, otherwise it's life. So they really want people to do more than that. Albert Campus once said, some people talk in their sleep, lecturers talk while other people sleep. Lecture is designed for the auditory learner and is passive and biased and engages a small percentage of the population. Here's what interests, well, I guess it comes up later, sorry. What do you think was the biggest request for engagement? This one was actually surprising to me. What'd you say? Authentic. That's good, because that is one of them, but that's not the #1.
Conversation.
Interesting, that's one they wanted too. But the #1 is passion. Every single person I talked to said, I want my teacher to be passionate. That's 100% us too. So we can stop lecturing all the time and we can be super passionate about what we're talking about. They absolutely want that. I respect a teacher more when they're passionate about their topic. If teachers would just be more passionate about their topic, maybe I'd want to learn. It is going to intrigue me if it intrigues you. If they are happy about their topic, then it will be interesting. This is simple. This is us, right? If you don't like your topic, ask whoever you work for to put you in a different class, because they really care about that. And there are people that still just go to the same class over and over and teach the same thing over and over, and they know it. Someone said authentic. They understand that, right? So it's really important. Not relatable topics. I have my teachers talking about something that actually applies to my life. What's interesting, and hopefully this will come up on another slide, I don't think it will. What's interesting is that when I interviewed a bunch of people that were in a personal finance class, the guy in the personal finance class was saying how to get out of debt. And I said, how did you think of that lecture? Was it a really good experience? And they said, don't teach me how to get out of debt. Teach me how to never get into debt. They don't want to learn about what's going to happen over there. They want to know how does it apply to me today. And that was a really big theme through all of this. because they really are about what's happening now, what am I doing now. Either the teacher is interesting or the topic is interesting, or I won't be engaged. If the topic is new and fresh and important for me now, I am more likely to be engaged. So you get kind of the idea. From the research, if students understand where the content will be applied in their future, they are more likely to be engaged. They want it to be relevant now. And I already told you that. Okay. We are not living our lives when we are 30, we are living our lives now. We used to say, when I grow up, when I'm 30, you know what's really interesting? So the millennials are all getting married in their 30s at the same time that the post-millennials are getting married. Very interesting. So they are not waiting like the last generation. Everything is now. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Let's go, let's go. Another one was monotonous. If you're doing the same thing over and over. So I teach a whole bunch of different subjects and I have a bunch of different degrees. It's crazy. People say, what do you teach? I'm like, oh, that's just such a loaded question. But there was this at one time I taught British literature. And I knew I wasn't comfortable teaching it, but I said okay to the professor because I really want to teach Shakespeare and he wouldn't let me teach Shakespeare if I wasn't teaching British literature. I was so scared of that subject that I actually did the same thing week in, week out, the same thing over and over and over. Someone actually wrote in a review, I feel like I deserve my money back. Because I had done the same thing over and over. And anybody who knows I'm a teacher knows that it's not me. I don't normally do that, but I was so scared of that topic that I thought if I deviated, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. What if they ask me a question I don't know how to answer, right? So monotonous is not something they're okay with. They need something to stimulate them. They need something new. They need something different. They want it to be more interactive. They say when the topic is boring and the same, I just don't care, right? Someone said authentic. They want you to be open and real. They can smell somebody who is not truthful with them a mile away. And so they really want that. This thing is very sensitive.